Hello everyone. So today I want to reading this text with the title "The Paradox of Technological Efficiency in the Modern Society." In contemporary discourse, technological advancement is frequently equated with efficiency, productivity, and the progress. Digital tools promise to reduce human effort, accelerate communication, and optimize decision making across sectors. However, despite unprotected technological capacity, modern society often experiences intensified workload, cognitive overload, and a diminished well-being. This paradox raises critical questions about whether technological efficiency genuinely liberates individuals or subtly rhetorical labor in a way that amplifies pressure and defense. Historically, technological innovation emerged as the response to human limitation, from the mechanization of the agriculture to the automation of manufacturing. Tools were designed to reduce physical labor and increase output. In theory, such development should have resulted in greater leisure time and improved quality of life. Yet, empirical evidence suggests that efficiency gains frequently led to higher expectations rather than reduced demand. As tasks become easier to perform, institutions often respond by increasing volume, speed, or complexity, thereby neutralizing the intended benefit of efficiency. In the digital age, this phenomenon is practically visible in professional environment. Email, instant messaging, and collaboration platforms have eliminated physical and temporal barriers to communication. While these tools enable rapid coordination, they also blur the boundaries between work and personal life. Employees are increasingly expected to remain accessible beyond traditional working hours, leading to chronic stress and the attentional fragmentation. Efficiency in this context becomes a mechanism for attending labor rather than minimizing it. Moreover, technological efficiency resolve cognitive process, algorithmic system filter information and recommended decision and automate judgment. Although this reduces the burden of routine tasks, it may also erode critical thinking and autonomy. When individuals rely excessively on the automated system, they risk losing the capacity to evaluate information independently. The conquest of efficiency thus college potential decline in human agency and reflective reasoning. The paradox in future complicated by economic incentives and the competitive market organization that fail to adopt efficiency and changing technology risks obsolescence. Consequently, efficiency become a normative standard rather than a strategic choice. This complexity fosters a child in the world technological adoption accelerates regardless of this social or psychological consensus. Individuals must adapt constitutionally, often without advices, institutional support, or ethical consideration. Addressing this paradox requires or redefinition or efficiency itself, rather than measuring success solved in the term of speed or output. Society must consider sustainability, human well-being, and cognitive integrity. Technological tools should be funded not only by what they enable us to do faster, but also by how they shape our values, behavior, and relationship. Without such reflection, offensive may remain an illusion that promises veneration while delivering constraint. Cultural memory and the construction of collective identity. Cultural memory plays a fundamental role in shaping collective collective identity, function- functioning as a shared reservoir of narrative, symbol, and the interpretation of the past. Unlike individual memory, which is rooted in personal experience, cultural memory is socially construed and transmitted across generations through language, ritual, education, and media. It provides community with a sense of continuity, legitimacy, and belonging, while simultaneously influencing how society understands themselves in the present. At its core, cultural memory is selective. Societies do not remember the past in this eternity, rather, they emphasize certain events while marginalizing or forgetting others. This process of selection is rarely neutral. Political interests, power relations, and ideological frameworks often determine while histories are preserved and which are silenced as a result. Cultural memory can serve both as a tool of concession and mechanism of exclusion, reinforcing dominant narrative while suppressing alternative voice. National identity over a clear illustration of this dynamic. Foundational might, heroic figure, and commemorative practice are commonly institutional through monument, national holiday, and the school curricula. This representation fosters unity and self-pride, yet they may oversimplify complex historical reality. By presenting the past and the current and morally unambiguous narrative, cultural memory can observe internal conflict, injustice, and contradiction that are essential to a more honest understanding of history. In the context of globalization, cultural memory faced new challenges. Increased mobility, digital communication, and the transnational media flows expose society to multiple and often competing historical narratives. Migrant communities, for example, may maintain memory that differs from dominant national histories, creating layered identities that reside singular definition. This plurality can enrich cultural dialogue, but it can also provoke tension when unstable narratives are questioned or destabilized. Digital technology has further transformed the production and the circulation of cultural memory. Social media platforms, online archives, and virtual museums democratic access to historical material and enable grassroots participation in the memory making. However, they also accelerate the spread of misinformation and fragment collective attention. The abundance of digital memory does not guarantee depth or accuracy. Instead, it often favors immediacy and emotional response over critical reflection. Understanding cultural memory as an active and constant process is crucial for navigating contemporary identity debates rather than treating memory as a fixed inheritance. Society must recognize their responsibility in shaping how the past is interpreted and transmitted. Inclusive and critical engagement with cultural memory can foster dialogue, promote historical accountability, and support more pluralistic form of collective identification in the increasingly interconnection world. Climate anxiety and the psychology of environmental awareness. As scientific advance of climate change become increasingly conclusive, public awareness of environmental rights has intensified. Alongside this awareness, a growing psychological phenomenon known as climate anxiety has emerged. Climate anxiety refers to chronic fears, distress, or helplessness associated with the perceived inevitability of environmental degradation. While not classified as a clinical disorder, it represents a significant emotional response to global ecologically uncertainty. Climate anxiety is particularly prevalent among younger generations who are confronted with projection of long-term environmental decline. Unlike immediate threats, climate change unfolds gradually, making it difficult to conceptualize an emotional process. This temporary ambiguity often produces a sense of powerlessness as individuals struggle to reasonable person action with the scales of the problem. Reducing consumption or adopting sustainable lifestyle may feel insignificant when contrasted with industrial emission and the systemic inaction. Psychology, climate anxiety reflects a tension between knowledge and agency, increased access to scientific information and chance understanding of environmental rights. Yet it does not necessarily provide clear pathways for meaningful interpretation. This imbalance can lead to emotional paralysis characterized by avoidance, denial, or disengagement. In some cases, individuals cope by distancing themselves from environmental discourse altogether, despite acknowledging its importance. However, climate anxiety is not entirely detrimental. While accompanied by social support and constructive outlet, it can motivate civic engagement and collection action. Research in the environmental psychology suggests that emotions such as concern and fear can catalyze pro-environmental behavior in individual perfects their action as socially support and politically relevant. Thus, the psychological impact of climate awareness depends largely on contextual factor rather than on information alone. Educational institutions play a critical role in shaping this context. Environmental education that emphasizes system solution, collective responsibility, and the political participation can transform anxiety into empowerment. By framing climate change as a shared challenge rather than an individual burden, educators can mitigate feeling of the isolation and despair. Moreover, integrating emotional literacy into climate education help individuals recognize and manage their response more effectively. Ultimately, climate anxiety reflects a rational reaction to unpredictable global crisis. Rather than dismissing it as irrational fear, society must address its underlying cause through transparent communication, include policymaking, and meaningful opportunities for participation. By acknowledging the psychological dimension of environmental awareness, it becomes possible to foster resilience and sustain long-term engagement with climate action. So that's all from me, and goodbye.